Dear respected bhikshus and bhikshunis and the rest of us brothers, sisters. Indeed, I am very impressed. You see, the different countries, you see, who follow, who develop interest about Buddha Dharma. You see, you come together. So, I am very much impressed. Now, today's world, 7 billion human beings, everyone wants happy life. It is right. Everybody should have happy life. One time in, I think, Mexico, one Catholic university. So I express half joke. Sometimes we religious people, religious faith remain on also the clothes. So while you take clothes, you see you are more serious. Once your clothes put there, then nothing. So later, one Catholic leader especially came to see me, and he very much appreciate what my sort of comment. And anyway, we are now 21st century. Then materialistic life, I think everywhere, because existing education very much oriented about material value. So people who come through that kind of education, they eventually, you see, they create materialistic culture, materialistic life. So, I think, frankly speaking, the existing modern education come from West, come from mainly Europe. So in Europe, you see, besides concept of God, faith, you see, no knowledge how to tackle our emotion. Whereas India, over 3,000 years, developed a concept of ahimsa, non-violence, and with that concept of karuna, compassion. Over 3,000 years already developed the concept of shamatha, single-pointed mind meditation, and vipassana, analytical meditation in this country. So, Indian tradition, in Hindu, I think Sangha philosophy, oldest Indian sort of spiritual tradition, Sangha philosophy. And then from Sangha philosophy, there are different sort of Hindu traditions developed, including Jains, and then later Buddhism. So now, all these, I feel, you see, from Indian tradition, the Jesus Christ, in the Bible, you see, it mentioned 3 wise men from East, mentioned. Oh, so that indicates, at that time, in Jerusalem, in this area, people have the impression, East, there are more sort of wise people, isn't it? So there are some story, the Jesus Christ, he himself, you see, come to India and some contact with Buddhist monk. In any way, so from Sankhya philosophy, I feel the Judaism, I don't know. From where Judaism started? Judaism. Israel. Okay. I mean, Jewish people, yes, Israel. So Judaism.
Maybe in America.
In the early days, there were many tribes, Your Holiness, and they had various deities, like Baal and others. And the Israeli people had the deity Jehovah. And Jehovah said that he was the true God and that his people should worship him. So it goes back many thousands of years in that area, which we now call Israel.
So Judaism, some connection with Indian tradition?
I don't think so, but we don't know. It doesn't sound like it when you read
No one
the
says
early.
that. No one says that.
No, I don't think so.
No one says like that.
I feel the earliest spiritual or religious tradition, I think Sankhya philosophy, over 3,000 years. So then, naturally, including Buddhism, you see, the existing religion is as a base, then further sort of some new ideas, new concept, you see, combine. I think that is the historical factor. Sometimes in some Buddhist text mentioned, I think 80,000 years ago, was one Buddha come. I doubt. So there is sort of saying, kasore, lama tebachenge, lama sobor tangsach.
So there's a saying that a devout disciple actually, you call it, falters or makes the Lama false.
So I think, a little bit exaggerate. Oh, Buddha Dharma, several thousand years ago, already there. I doubt. The evolution, it is true, scientific basis. So then gradually, you see, the human being developed from, I think, originally some kind of the sea animal, water animal, small animal, then gradually go like that, and on land, and then gradually to walks, then gradually this human brain evolutionary develop. I think that's a scientific basis for explanation. I believe that more. So in any way, every human being wants happy life. Yet, a lot of problems which we are facing today, many of the problem is our own creation. With too much emphasis, we and they. And then including religious faith, or my religion, their religion. And sometimes religion also causing killing in Arab area and Syria, in this area. Even same Muslim, Shia and Sunni, killing each other. And Afghanistan also. And unfortunately, in Burma, some Burmese Buddhists, so also they create suffering some Muslims, so some problems. So religion also becoming a cause of division. It is quite unfortunate. So therefore, the old religion, I feel, original India. Then gradually different tradition come. Now here today, one of my commitment is promotion of religious harmony. So I believe it is possible. Look, India, all major world religious traditions live together here. Occasionally, small problem here and there. But basically, all different religious traditions live together. And mutual respect. So I believe religious harmony is possible. So we must make effort to promote religious harmony. Now look here. In philosophical field, there is differences. Even Buddhism, Pali tradition, Sanskrit tradition, and then Pali tradition, I think 18 division or something, after Buddha passed away. Then Sanskrit tradition is mainly 4 major school of thought: Vibhashik, Sotantik, Chitta Mantra, and Madhyamika. So there are differences. All, you see, recite Buddham Shanam Gacchami, Dhammam Shanam Gacchami, Sangham Shanam Gacchami. But in philosophical field, there is differences. Why? All religious main sort of teaching is love, loving kindness. And then all these different philosophical views, due to different people, different culture background, different sort of, also the mental disposition, it is necessary, different philosophical views, all aiming promotion of human love, loving kindness, or karuna. So that's the basis we can develop harmony among the different traditions. Different philosophy is just a method to promote deeper human value. That's human compassion. Okay. So one of my commitment is try to promote religious harmony. I respect all different religious traditions. I respect. Now, here, Buddhist group. It seems now Buddha himself, you see, express, "Oh, my follower, monks, scholars should not accept my teaching out of faith, out of devotion, but rather thorough investigation and experiment." So therefore, you see, Buddha himself, you see, told us, you should carry investigation and experiment. So Nalanda tradition, mainly Nalanda tradition, like Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita, Dharmakirti, Chandakirti, all these, you see, investigate. Even Buddha's own word. When they find even Buddha's own word, some kind of contradiction, then they reject. Although this is Buddha's word, but he taught according different sort of audience with different mental disposition. He taught that we cannot accept that. That's the Nalanda tradition. So, mainly Nagarjuna and these great master of Nalanda, they make distinction within the Buddha's own word. This Buddha's teaching we can accept, literally. This teaching we cannot accept. So the
and so in the Nalanda tradition, these scholars had made distinction between within the Buddha's teaching, those teachings which are interpretable or provisional and those which are definitive.
So I also followed that way. Like you see, 80,000 years ago, one Buddha there, I don't believe that. So now, Buddha Dharma, among the different religious traditions, among different traditions of this country, I think Buddha Dharma, I think time passes, further develop, utilize human intelligence and investigation. Some book which we compile about 300 volumes in the Tibetan Sorority, basis of Tibetan Buddhist tradition. There are 300 volumes. Buddha's own word about 100 volumes, including Paramita Sutra, and then Vinaya, all these about 100 volumes. Then the commentary, about 200 volumes. So altogether 300 volumes. Then some time back, I think at least 15 years, at least I think around 15 years ago, I suggested the content of these 300 volumes, we can divide 3 parts: science, philosophy, and religion. So science, although it's a particle mentioned, all the development of whole cosmic cosmos or solar system mentioned, and of course mind, very detailed explanation about mind. These we can consider part of science. Then second part, philosophy. There are, as I briefly mentioned, different philosophical views there. Then third, religion. So the 2 parts, science and philosophy, is we can consider academic subject. Then third, including Vinaya, these are religion. So we compile this science about mind, about its particle, or subtle particle like that. So we publish here, and also translation, Chinese translation. I think most for English translation there. And then I think Russian translation, Mongolian translation, I think still going on. So these books, since we publish here, some Chinese university, you see, get some of these books. So some Chinese professors, some university, after seeing that, they express, oh, Tibetan Buddhism is Nalanda tradition, typical Nalanda tradition, and a very scientific religion. So, because we emphasize reason, experiment, not just faith. Therefore, my own sort of experience lasts over nearly, I think, 40 years. I have serious discussion with scientists, mainly cosmology and neurobiology, and then physics, quantum physics, including quantum physics. You see, in Nalanda tradition, quantum physics thoroughly explained. So one Indian scholar, Kasa, late Rajaramana, he once told me the quantum physics in the West, something new. But in this country, over 2,000 years, the quantum physics already developed. And he recited few sentences of Nagarjuna, Madhyamika Mulakarika. It is true. So when I discuss with scientists and the subject quantum physicist, quantum physics, and sometimes I feel I know better. I really feel that sometimes. Because you see, nothing exists as appears, as quantum physics say. Nothing. There is big differences, appearance and reality. That's exactly the Nalanda philosophy. You see, mentioned that. And the Chitta Mantra, as well as the Madhyamika, both, you see, mentioned there is differences, appearance and reality. Appearance, something objectively exists, but reality, observers sort of designation. It's very clearly mentioned. Then recently, some Chinese quantum physics student, I heard one article wrote by some Chinese quantum physicist. You see, they sort of mentioned after knowing the quantum physics, nothing exists as appears. You see, that sort of philosophy or that concept very helpful to lose too much grasping, absoluteness. So that's Nagarjuna clearly mentioned. So it is quite now, I say, quite right to say Buddha Dharma and a Nalanda tradition, you see, very much sort of scientific religion, scientific Dharma. Once in Delhi, I had meeting some monks, some scholars from Bangkok Buddhist University. We have some discussion about Four Noble Truths and 16 kasati.
16 different characteristics of the Four Noble Truths.
And the Changcho Sodun.
And then the 37 factors to enlightenment.
These are common. I discuss. See, it becomes very clear. It is our common sort of practice and a common sort of also concept. Then I ask them, do you believe these things is mainly based on Buddha's own word or through reasoning? Then they say mainly based on Buddha's word. Then I reflect Dharmakirti, Marve Shara, the Nalendra master, logician, great logician, Dharmakirti, Dignak, Marve Chona, Ka, Dignak. You see, these Nalendra master, they are great logician. So they reasoning every Buddha's teaching, not based on Buddha's own word. Buddha said that reason, such reason. So I felt the Nalendra tradition, particularly you see, the Dignak and Dharmakirti's text, which we study. So very useful. You see, every important point, not just relying Buddha's word, but through reasoning. So therefore, now some Chinese scholar who notice these things, they describe Buddha Dharma, Nalendra tradition is very scientific. So now, these days, I expressing, we Buddhists should be 21st century Buddhist. That means study Buddha's teaching and a fuller knowledge. And with that, faith is 21st century's faith. So many Chinese and also Buddhist, and also it's a Tibetan, and probably I think Thai, or some Burmese, you know, to see, Kasa God Chamas, six Kasa, Namo Tase, Bhagavato, Arahado, Samya Sambuddhas. Recite that, but without knowing, you see, deeper knowledge. So I teaching the Chinese Buddhist. You see, it is not sufficient. Just Amitabh, not sufficient. We must study Buddha Dharma, and then utilize our human intelligence and use scientific finding. Go like that. Then, I think almost 40 years since I have serious discussion with scientists. So when I start, when I develop this desire or discussion with scientists, some my friend give me warning, be careful. Some even use the word, science is killer of Dharma. Then I reflect Buddha's own word, as I mentioned earlier. My follower should not accept my teaching out of faith, but rather thorough investigation. So I start dialogue with modern scientists. So therefore, as I mentioned briefly, say, no problem, discussion with scientists for these four fields, and particularly quantum physics and psychology. Sometimes I sort of expressing psychology, the Western scholars, about psychology, you see, their knowledge compare ancient Indian psychology, and then modern psychology looks like kindergarten level. Oh, the Indian psychology, highly developed. So I have some serious discussion with modern scientists. Then eventually it became clear many scientists really eager to learn more from Buddhist sort of science, Buddhist tradition. So many scientists, their profession as a scientist, non-believer. But personally, some practice Buddha Dharma, like that. So as Chinese scholar says, Buddha Dharma can go with modern science side by side. It is true. So now important is we should study. Just to recite with a few prayer is not sufficient. We must study. And in Tibetan tradition, in order to become a fairly good scholar, at least 20, 30 years study. Our way study is the root text, all wrote by Nalanda master. These root texts memorize, and then commentary, mainly Indian masters, Nalanda masters, and including many Tibetan commentary. And then we utilize debate, logical way, debate. So the debate, in order to carry the logical approach of whenever we heard something, the immediate reaction is why? Never say yes. Always raise the question why. Even Buddha's own word, a certain word, when we saw why, then it brings investigation. What's the reason? So that's Nalanda tradition. Sometimes I jokingly, so a little bit teasing to Thailand or Burmese Buddhists, you see, who mainly follow the Pali tradition. So I teasing Buddhist brothers, sisters, who mainly, you see, use Pali tradition. You see, you have no teeth. If some solid food come, then so Nalanda tradition extensively use logic. So we have teeth, some hard sort of thing. We can like that. So now Pali tradition. Pali tradition is the basis of Buddha Dharma. You see, sometimes the people, even some literature mentioned Mahayana, Hinayana. I don't like that word. So I usually use it to describe Nalanda tradition, Pali tradition. So Pali tradition is the basis of Buddha's teaching, and mainly Bhikshu vow, and 253 our Pratimoksha in Sanskrit. So there, the precept, 253 precepts, 4 parajika, 13 sangha, what called, so on. Altogether, 253. According Pali, because of the Pratimoksha, Pratimoksha, about 270 something. No. 120. Oh, like that. I check, you see, 4 parachikas, 13 sanghas, these things same. So minor thing, that's minor, not much problem. Even you see, when you take food, you should not sort of open your mouth too big, no. And then should not do like that. You see, there are minor points. And this rope, you see, in Pali, just one, you properly wear the rope. The Sanskrit Pratimoksha, about to see the lower garment, 7 points. You should not wear too high or too low, and too much kasura.
Pleats.
Oh, so 7 points like that, minor. Oh, so in any way, in Thai, once I have been the Bangkok, few occasions. The Thailand still not yet developed also the diplomatic relation with China, and I have some freedom go Bangkok. After diplomatic relations start, then no possibility. So I stay in monastery. I really impressed, you see, the monks' lifestyle. And you see, carry a baking bowl, no? And you see, no private kitchen. You see, with the baking bowl, you can go round like that. So I really enjoy. Only my complaint is, you see, you have to go without shoe. So Bangkok quite hot. You see, road also quite hot. So I really burned my feet. But the monks' rule, I really very much respect and admire. Wonderful. So that's the basis of Pali, basis of Buddha Dharma. Pali tradition you kept very well. Few years ago, one World Parliament of Religion meeting, one day in Australia. So some 2 Burmese monks, you see, they want to see me. Then I prepared in my hotel room with this robe, and I received them. And then we discussed our common practice, Four Noble Truths, these things. And then I mentioned about Sanskrit tradition, there are some differences. But we all have same practice of Vinaya practice. When I mentioned that, these 2 Burmese monks, surprised, you also have the practice of the Vinaya. I think they got the impression Tibetan Buddhism is Lamaism or something mysterious religion, not truly it's a Buddha Dharma. I think they got that kind of sort of impression. So when I mentioned our Pratimoksha in Sanskrit, their Pratimoksha in Pali, so some small differences, otherwise basically same, I mentioned. So these 2 Burmese Buddhist monks, you see, they got the impression Tibetan lamas with wife and some alcohol. So there are some individual lama practice that, but basically strictly follow Vinaya practice. So like that. So in any way, Pali tradition, now time come. As I mentioned earlier, the word Hinayana, Mahayana is not good. You see, it creates wrong impression. The Pali tradition is basis of Buddha Dharma. And then Sanskrit tradition, you say, very much sort of also the emphasis using logical approach. So these two traditions, I think, should now combine. Okay. Like that. So then we can go with modern science, as I mentioned earlier. So then Buddha Dharma, if we carry Buddha Dharma with, the analytical meditation, analyze, everything analyze, not just faith, then this Buddhist faith can remain next at least another 2 centuries, 2 or 3 centuries. If Buddha Dharma carries just faith, then I don't know, within 1 generation, 2 generations may disappear. So, therefore, I emphasize we Buddhists should be 21st century Buddhist study and utilize human intelligence maximum way, combined with modern science, like that. And then I want to share with you today's world. A lot of problem, as I mentioned briefly, a lot of problem, our own creation. So such time, all major religious traditions have important role to bring inner peace. Then most of the theistic religion, just a faith. Buddhist tradition, not just a faith, reasoning. So therefore, I think today's world, we Buddhist community have some special responsibility to bring world peace through inner peace. So, so therefore, now today's world, I think Buddha's teaching, Buddha's advice, the very word, you see, we use the mother sentient being. All sentient being, consider as your own mother. So that very concept, mother sentient being, very helpful to bring peace among different community. Whether believer or non-believer, believe this tradition or that tradition at a secondary level. We are same human being. So my number one commitment as a human being, I'm trying to promote sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings and respect others' right and sense of concern of others' well-being. Try to reduce self-centered attitude. This is my, and so my number one commitment, promotion of basic human value. That's compassion, irrespective whether believer or non-believer. And then, the human nature the loves it. Some scientists, they say basic human nature, since we are a social animal, so basic human nature is more compassionate. That's now scientists say. It is true. Any social animal, like some, including some birth. You see, the individual beings' survival depend on rest of the community. So there is some special emotional level feeling of community, same community. It is necessary in order to survive yourself. You need community. So respect or showing interest about the value of the sense of community. So now, modern time, technology and population, now, in reality, 7 billion human beings is one community. East depend west, west depend east, similarly south and north. So thinking realistically, then entire 7 billion human beings is actually one human community. So we must develop respect, compassion, sense of concern of all 7 billion human beings. That's my number one commitment. Number two commitment is promotion of religious harmony. Number three commitment, I'm Tibetan. I'm Dalai Lama. So Tibetan people trust me. So my main concern about Tibet, political matter, since 2001, I totally retired about political responsibility. Now we elected political leadership there. So political field, he is my boss. And the spiritual field, I am his boss. So now I totally sort of retired. And not only I retired, but in future, in case Dalai Lama institution remain, now no longer any responsibility about political matter. So I think first Dalai Lama, second Dalai Lama, third Dalai Lama, mainly these three great scholar and spiritual leader, three Dalai Lama, no political responsibility. Then since fifth Dalai Lama, because of certain circumstances, Dalai Lama then take the responsibility about political matter. So now last about because of the 4 centuries. So sometimes I sort of express the dual responsibility, political and spiritual, by Dalai Lama, started 15th Dalai Lama. So I changed that. So if 5th Dalai Lama return, what he going to say? But there is no danger. He repay, he dead. So I have freedom to decide. Like that. So my main concern about Tibet is preservation of our knowledge. All this knowledge originally come from Nalanda, come from India. But then India, Nalanda, now when we visit Nalanda, some pigeon fly here, there. No knowledge, no human being. Okay. So only we, since 8th century, the Tibetan king, quite wise, in spite of very close link with Chinese through marriage, the king decide. And sometimes I feel the 7th century, the King Songtsen Gampo, Tibetan king, he married with a Chinese princess and the Buddha statue in Lhasa, brought by Chinese princess. Very special, close link. But you see, Tibetan king, I think he must enjoy Chinese food. But you see, when he saw Chinese letter, I think he confused. So he decided, create Tibetan script, copy from Devanagari of India, and alphabet. Then 8th century Tibetan king. You see, as I mentioned earlier, already very close link and the number of influence from Chinese Buddhist tradition. But he prefer, as far as Buddhism is concerned, must bring directly from India. So he invited one at that time top master of Nalanda institution, Shanda Rakshita. He invited to Tibet. And Shanda Rakshita advised him, since you already have sort of also the language with script, so instead of study Sanskrit and should translate, and you study this Buddhist teaching through your own language. For that, must translate. So as I mentioned earlier, 300 volumes, you see, translation, mainly Sanskrit and Vinaya, all these things, Pali language. So therefore, you see, Tibetan Buddhist tradition is truly Nalanda tradition. So now today's world, Nalanda tradition available only among Tibetan tradition, not in India. So, so my main concern is preservation of that tradition. And including Tibetan language, I notice, since you see Tibetan language, you see, before Buddhism come, Tibetan language is very, very primitive. Once you see Buddhism reached Tibet and the translation started, so Tibetan language become very rich, equally go with Sanskrit because translation. And whenever new word come, the new create new word. So therefore, now today, about psychology, about complicated philosophy, Tibetan language is the best language to explain precisely. According to my own experience, I noticed that. So therefore, Tibetan culture, including Tibetan language, I think worthwhile to preserve. It is very important for preservation of Nalanda tradition, Sanskrit tradition, and also Pali tradition. So my commitment is try to preserve Tibetan culture, Tibetan language, Tibetan knowledge. And then Tibetan environment. Now global warming. Now soon Tibet will become like Afghanistan, dry. These big lake now becoming dry. So Tibet, in a way, sometimes I describing we Tibetan. Tibet land is supplier of water to India. So once Tibet become desert, and then you Indian really find it difficult. Brahmaputra dry, or Ganges dry, very difficult. Thailand, I don't know any sort of connection, but Mekong River also is come from Tibet. So therefore, preserve Tibetan ecology is very important. So I often use expressing the concern about preservation of Tibetan ecology. So sometimes the Chinese, too much exploitation, nature resources, deforestation, too much. So this something very important matter. Not only 6 million Tibetan people, but also whole northern India and also into China, this area. So that's my another commitment. Otherwise, I totally retired from political responsibility. Then the latest my commitment is try to revival of ancient Indian knowledge. All our knowledge come from India. So India is the only nation who can combine modern education and ancient Indian knowledge. So ancient Indian knowledge brings inner peace. Modern education brings physical comfort, material development. India can combine these two things. So that's my latest commitment, try to revival of ancient Indian sort of knowledge about mind, about emotion. So now, 84-year-old person, so these are my commitment. I think next 10 years, I will continue carry this work. And historically, West, mainly Judeo-Christian tradition. But we are same human being, mentally, emotionally, physically. So, to some people, number of Westerner now really showing interest about Buddhist philosophy. Okay. So like you here. So like in India, many Christians there, many Muslims there. So, okay, why not invest more and more Buddhists there? Okay. In America also, now a number of sort of Buddhist centers there, many American, Native American, you see, showing interest about Buddha Dharma. Okay. So, we have some potential to create a more peaceful world through inner peace. So that's our sort of immediate responsibility. So now some questions.
I thought we would have some questions.
Yes, question now.
Time. Hear about the monks have to eat before 12.
Yes, that's right.
So, no question. 2 questions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Question now, because
Question.
the monks have to go to eat before 12. And
Okay.
we have to have group photograph.
Okay.
May I ask a question, sir?
No question.
Question. First question. Few questions, I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Be short because of time.
Yes.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Your Holiness, thank you very much for being the source of energy to every one of us. My question is very short. Living in exile is not easy, and how you lead the people to respond, keep them, ahimsa, and not, for us to share your knowledge, how you lead them, to not to respond violently, but being non-violent. That is my question. Thank you.
Oh, I think Tibetan, before Buddhism came, Tibetan, I think like Mongolian, very much warrior. After Buddhism reached, Tibetan become more compassionate society. So now some Chinese officials also mentioned, unlike Xinjiang, Uyghur people, Tibetan, non-violent, very peaceful. So therefore, in ancient time, according to Chinese history book, 7th century, 8th century, 9th century, Tibet, independent country. There are 3 independent countries: China, Mongolia, Tibet. According to Chinese sort of history book, some Chinese scholar, now they very clearly mentioned, but we are not seeking independence of China, Tibet, you see, from isolate and from separate from China, because of the circumstances and our sort of philosophical view. Also, you see, everyone mother-centered being, and China, our neighbor state, and we very much committed, live together. We within Chinese Union, we want to remain there, provided we should have right to preserve our own knowledge, our own language, like that. Then, so I think that's mutual benefit. Economically, we get some benefit. In spiritual field, now China already around over 300 volumes, 300 millions Buddhist population in China. Many of these Chinese Buddhists very much sort of following Tibetan Buddhism. So we can help them, we can serve them. And economically, China, now rich country, so we get benefit. Then, next question.
His Holiness, it is a very honor for me to meet you. In these days, actually I'm from Korea and I'm working for gender equality within Buddhism. And in these days, many young people feel depression, anxiety, or moody, gloomy. So especially young women, they had more difficulties than men because of sexual violence. So
that's basically existing education system. Lacking how to tackle our anger, fear. These not necessarily considered as a religious subject, as an academic subject. How to keep peaceful mind. And that is not just a prayer, but training our mind. I think here it is quite encouraging. All positive emotion based on reason. So if we think more, the positive emotion can increase year by year. But negative emotions, such as anger, very much based on appearances. So ignorance, which believe things exist as appears, that's ignorance. So all negative emotion is very much related with ignorance, no base. So that is, I think, really a hopeful sign. We can develop further positive emotions such as compassion and sense of concern of others' well-being. That's altruism. These things very much based on reason. Thinking more conviction come. The negative emotion just spontaneously come. Think more, it become not proper base, just emotion. So therefore, I think through education, I think, you see, we can develop how to tackle our destructive emotion, not as a religion, but as a hygiene of emotion. These days, I'm expressing from kindergarten level, the hygiene of physical there. Now we must include hygiene of emotion from kindergarten level up to university level. Then I think generation who come through that kind of education, I think can be more peaceful.